Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto formed a new team, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Gaara narrowed his pale green eyes. Haku was a very worthy opponent. Not caring that his friends and possibly other villagers were watching him display the terrible power he had used to strike fear into the hearts of the people of Suna, Gaara unleashed a very mild projectile of sand at the water country boy. Haku made a sound that resembled a startled gasp before stumbling back towards the water fountain he had utilized during his bout with Naruto. Gaara's sand moves fast like my water. Haku waved his arms, raising a defensive wall of water to deflect his opponent's strike. He watched Gaara regroup, his sharp eyes studying his every move. Every fleeting moment was a chance for Gaara to observe Haku and dissect his strategy. He wanted to turn his own method against him, and avoid that amazing water ability that had so easily throttled Naruto. The sand pulled away lightly, and the wall of water that had been protecting the dark-haired boy splashed uselessly down to the pavement. It was a sign that he was weakening. Jiraiya frowned to himself as he watched. Even though Haku had dispatched Naruto quickly, the overzealous blonde had clearly tired him out. Gaara had a fine opportunity to finish what Naruto had started. Still, Haku had superb chakra control, and a few direct hits would be more than enough to overpower Gaara. But the farm boy's chakra is limited, that's for sure. The Sennin noted while watching him retreat to the fountain for cover. Jiraiya had taken notice that Haku was panting heavily. He wouldn't be able to hold out very long if Gaara decided to get serious. Apparently that was the case. Come on Haku. Whack him. You did it to me. Naruto cheered his fatigued friend on. Neji and Hinata looked on apprehensively, while Sakura seemed in awe of Gaara's unique power. Haku took a deep breath and raised a hand slowly over his head. Gaara vigilantly observed as a stream of water raised itself from the small pool behind the dark-haired boy and it lashed out at him suddenly, whip-like almost. Automatically, Gaara's sand shield surrounded him, nullifying Haku's attack. The redhead wasn't entirely expecting it either. His sand sometimes acted on its own accord. Naruto fell quiet as he watched the next move, unsure of who would come out victorious. With a soft grunt of effort, Haku raised a number of strands. 3, 4, 5. Gaara quickly lost count. He could feel a slight jolt as Haku summoned the reserves of his chakra. The red-haired boy aimed for patience, understanding Haku was pressing his limits. Multiple jets of water were fired at Gaara, only to be countered with his wisps of sand. Haku suddenly felt frustrated. This was very different from fighting Naruto. Very different indeed. Just a bit more, Haku thought to himself while pummeling Gaara's defenses. The large amount of water he had used had lowered the surface of the fountain slightly, which in turn began to dampen Gaara's sand. It was Gaara's turn to frown. Haku had again used that sharp wit of his. His sand steadily became more slow and clumsy, heavy with the weight of the saturated grains. Like that was going to stop him. Haku did not stray from the fountain, intending to keep the battle in his preferred element. Gaara wouldn't have it. Gaara let his sand soar in a wave towards Haku, but his slothful weapon had failed when speed was needed, and reached the fountain after Haku had aptly dodged. Well, the tables are about to turn, you little sand squirt. Jiraiya thought, quite entertained. Hinata and Sakura gasped as Gaara's sand shot forward relentlessly, delivering a swift, vicious blow. Reaching into his chakra reserves again, Haku managed another water shield, more spherical, similar to what Gaara had defended himself with. He's been watching me too. Gaara said softly to himself. Haku was a true challenge and he had quickly earned Gaara's respect. Neji had turned to the Toad Sennin. Haku is straining himself. Jiraiya nodded. Yep, and it's actually a good example of what really goes on in the field. He momentarily drew the children's attention away from the fight. You all want to be ninja, right? So understand this. When you're on a mission or get ambushed, you won't always be in the best of health. The sage said matter-of-factly, your enemies will seek to wear you down until you are reduced to your last breath, that I can guarantee you. Hinata gulped. It is so dangerous, if you get sick or injured. Jiraiya shrugged. Well, that's what medic Nina for, and sheesh, it's not like every mission has life or death situations, princess. The Hyuga girl lowered her eyes. I know. Don't listen to Ero Sennin, Hinata-chan. He's just trying to scare you. Naruto stood by her and frowned at the Sennin. She lifted her head and smiled gratefully at the blonde boy. Whatever, just hush up and watch. The sage snapped, restoring the group's attention to the proper place. I wonder what Hokage-sama thinks about this matchup. Jiraiya thought. Haku realized that he had to end the fight or Gaara would end it for him. I have to use the last of my chakra, there's no other way I can fight him. He resolved while watching sand creep around the surface of the fountain. Haku dug deep within himself, scraping up the last of his chakra and forcing the water around him to obey. The strain was so immense, his companions could sense the surge of his chakra. Even the dense blonde could feel it, so he made it known. What was that? I feel strange all of the sudden. You're feeling Haku's chakra, Sakura answered simply, unable to withdraw her eyes from the sparring match. We all are, Neji confirmed. Gaara watched as a vortex of the remainder of the water fountain's contents raised itself like a looming serpent into the air. He grinned to himself. Now Haku was desperate. The funnel motion Haku had developed Gaara mimicked with his sand and he launched his counterstrike to meet Haku's. Jiraiya was greatly entertained by how Haku proved valiant in his struggles and how the redhead could be nearing victory. Sand and water collided with a huge force, and the recoil was just as bad for the two combatants. Both boys were forced back a number of feet while deflecting the other's blow. It appeared to be a stalemate. What Haku hadn't counted on was Gaara's improvisation. Upon analyzing Haku's fight with Naruto, Gaara was certain that Haku had no proficiency in hand-to-hand combat. The red-haired boy ducked away from the clashing beams of water and sand and ran at Haku. The onlookers were surprised by the full-out assault. Haku was not at all prepared. He had been preoccupied with his water barrage. Without thinking he exhaled, freezing a puddle on the ground into ice. Gaara slipped on it, but caught himself, and carried on towards Haku. Gaara's hand balled into a fist and connected solidly with Haku's sea. Again, the dark-haired boy made a startled sound, acknowledging he had been defeated. Or that's how it looked at first. Whoa! Naruto was in hysterics as Haku stumbled back and collapsed into the fountain. Gaara just hit Haku. Sakura thrust her fist in the air triumphantly. Yeah. I knew Gaara-kun would win. Neji and Hinata were too surprised to form an opinion about the outcome. Jiraiya, however, had seen it coming from a mile away. Damn sand kid. Gaara stood on the lip of the fountain, looking down at Haku who struggled to regain his composure. His chakra was nearly depleted and he had no hope of contending physically with the larger, bolder Gaara. He outsmarted me. Haku considered his friend's strategy. He knew that I can't fight without water. As painful as it was for him to admit, Gaara had found his weakness. But Haku decided to accept his loss with a smile. Gaara wasn't smiling. He hadn't hit Haku hard, but he wanted to. It had frightened him how he had wanted to hurt Haku. The adrenaline coursing through his veins when he had moved in for his unwarranted punch still left him itching to fight, to attack. But Haku was down and he didn't look like he could continue. It was time to stop. He had won. Well done. Gaara's eyes snapped wide open. No. Not you again. You wanted to use more chakra. You wanted to hurt him. It pleased me to watch. No. I won't hurt Haku. I can't hurt anyone anymore. Liar. Gaara abruptly screamed. He fell back from the fountain, covering his ears as if he were listening to some terrifying sound that only he could hear. It instantly frightened his companions. Gaara-kun. Sakura was alarmed at the sight. Jiraiya felt his stomach leap into his tea. Has the tanuki decided to resurface? They looked on in confusion as Gaara stumbled to the ground as if stricken. He was thrashing wildly and crying out like he was being attacked. Sand kid, the Sennin muttered while he hurried over to the flailing child. No, no. Gaara was rolling around, raking his hands through his hair. Don't push me away, it's useless. No, you're evil. We're evil. Haku wobbled to his feet and watched Gaara sob his eyes out on the sidewalk. He felt a little guilty for some reason, although he wasn't exactly sure why Gaara was in a panic in the first place. Gaara didn't hit me that hard. I'm alright, he confirmed. Jiraiya bent down to the red-haired boy. Hold still, squirt, you'll be alright. Gaara was inconsolable. His sand thrashed about as well, giving the sage a few painful blows to the face. No more fighting for a while, kid. Jiraiya grabbed hold of his arm. This seal of yours isn't stable like the blonde squirt's is. Haku ran over to Jiraiya, who was busy performing a 4-point sealing technique to restrain Gaara's weakened seal. Due to the boy's screaming, Haku couldn't tell if it was Jiraiya who may have been hurting him. Gaara. Naruto rushed to him with Sakura in tow, not understanding what had happened. Neji made Hinata keep her distance and she protested. It isn't safe, Hinata-sama, he said gently, we'll wait for things to calm down before we get closer. Not as if he wasn't concerned for Gaara's well-being, but primarily he felt that it would be worse if he failed to ensure the safety of his cousin. Gaara had already given Jiraiya a mouthful of sand at that point. The sealing was done quickly, and before Gaara had another moment to scream, the exertion left him unconscious. Haku, Naruto and Sakura had no idea what had taken place. What's wrong with Gaara-kun? Sakura demanded. Haku's voice shook. Did I hurt him? No, it wasn't you, Haku, Jiraiya assured him, lifting Gaara up. I can't explain it right now. You better explain it, Ero Sennin. Naruto hollered in the old ninja's face. Gaara was screaming like, I don't know. If you know something, then tell us. Jiraiya sighed. All I can tell you, squirts, is that the sand kid needs, medical attention. You all wait here. I'm taking him to see the Hokage. In a cloud of smoke, Jiraiya had disappeared with Gaara, leaving 5 very puzzled children behind. Neji and Hinata joined their companions. What happened to Gaara-kun? The Hyuga heiress asked. Naruto grimaced. We don't know. Ero Sennin wouldn't tell us. Haku was quiet, still believing that he had somehow caused Gaara's fit. Something was wrong with his chakra, Neji pointed out. Didn't you feel it? It grew and he started to panic. Sakura nodded in agreement. Yeah, I noticed it too. I just hope he's okay. Hokage-sama and Gama Sennin will look after him, Sakura-chan. Hinata said softly. Naruto grinned. Yeah, we've seen Gaara worse. This one time he fell out of this cloud thingy, and when Haku and I found him he looked horrible. I think he'll be okay though. Although it had only been about 2 hours since Naruto and his company prevented him from getting the caged bird seal, Neji decided that they had seen enough excitement for the day. I hope that Gaara-san feels better soon, Neji said honestly. Hinata-sama and I should probably be going home now. Hinata gave her cousin a bothered look, but then nodded to him. Thank you for all of your help, Hinata smiled. I would like it if we could see each other again sometime soon. Naruto gave her his foxy grin. Sure thing, Hinata-chan. How does tomorrow sound? She nodded. That sounds perfect. Goodbye. Neji bade their friends farewell before leading his cousin along for her training. Hinata smiled to herself as she thought, Neji-nisan didn't get the caged bird seal, and I can show father the jutsu Gama Sennin showed us. I hope Gaara-kun will be alright. It looked like it was going to be a good day. After their Hyuga friends had departed, Sakura turned to a crestfallen Haku. Haku-kun, are you alright? She asked. Haku sat down on the rim of the currently empty fountain and sighed. He was exhausted, bruised and out of chakra. Of course he was alright. I don't know if I hurt Gaara somehow. He confessed his guilt. Naruto folded his arms. Gaara has been like this before, remember? When we first met Ero Sennin. Haku looked up at him. Oh yes. He was acting strangely then too. Sakura was baffled. What happened when you first met him? See, Gaara was really sick or something when he first showed up. Naruto summed up the events, so we had to take care of him. And he doesn't sleep, Haku added. Again, she was perplexed. What do you mean he doesn't sleep? How can someone not sleep? Naruto shrugged. Gaara's weird like that. He just doesn't. I don't think he can sleep, Naruto, at least recently, Haku corrected. He's afraid to. The blonde scratched his head. Oh yeah, he said that he hears voices, didn't he? Sakura frowned. She was growing more and more concerned for the red-haired boy. Besides having to put up with Naruto's denseness and Haku's brilliance, she knew little of any other obstacles he may have faced. I don't think that you hurt Gaara that bad anyway. Naruto continued. I mean, it looked like he was the one beating you up, Haku. Haku brushed a spot of wet sand from his forearm. I suppose so. If you weren't tired, you would have beaten Gaara-kun, I think, Sakura added. Naruto just happens to be really good at messing things up. The blonde huffed at the pink-haired girl. What's that supposed to mean? If you hadn't made Haku-kun run around like crazy before, Gaara-kun wouldn't have hurt him so badly. Sakura retorted. So what if Gaara is super strong? Naruto looked at Haku's bruised face. Haku looks fine to me. Haku couldn't help but smile, which only added to Sakura's annoyance. Boys, she muttered to herself, not understanding how they could be so ignorant. Naruto seemed to be on his own level of brainlessness at times. Is anyone else hungry? Haku asked, hoping to lighten the mood. Yeah. The Kyuubi container had only one thing in mind. Why don't we go to Ichiraku Ramen and eat? That place is supposed to be great. Naruto-kun, we don't have any money, the pink-haired girl sighed. Disappointment washed over his face. The cruelty of the material world hath no mercy on even children. But I guess we can go to my house and eat, Sakura quickly added, not wanting to dampen her friend's spirits. Haku nodded, but Naruto looked hesitant. I thought your parents didn't like me, Sakura-chan. Naruto reminded her. She frowned and then resolved, oh, well, we can just eat outside then. I don't care what they say. Naruto's grin reassured Haku and Sakura that he held no grudge against the less hospitable people of Konoha. Haku followed behind Naruto and Sakura. They led him around, showing him their places of interest, which included numerous ramen stands and even the Ninja Academy. While excitedly explaining to Haku that in a few days they would attend the Ninja Academy together, Naruto noticed a familiar face quietly traveling down the opposite side of the street. Sakura looked at the distracted blonde. What is it now, Naruto-kun? She and Haku looked curiously towards the distraction. It was a boy with raven black hair, and equally dark eyes. He was walking by himself. Naruto's mouth acted on its own. Hey, Sasuke, do you know him? Haku asked, impressed that Naruto knew so many people. Sasuke looked up, nearly startled, and watched Naruto jog across the street and fall in step with him. A girl with pink hair and another young boy followed him. The young Uchiha recognized the loud blonde after a moment. Oh, hello Naruto. Naruto was grinning again. Hey Sasuke, I didn't get to thank you for calling off those Chunin from a while ago. The other boy nodded, remembering how Naruto had been randomly attacked for no apparent reason. Sakura and Haku, however, had no idea what their loud friend was talking about. It was no trouble, Sasuke answered simply, how have you been? He could only guess what had happened to Naruto during the time he had disappeared with no explanation for over a week. Great, I went to train by myself for a while. Naruto answered, oh, and here are my friends, Haku, he gestured to the dark-haired boy, and Sakura-chan. The girl with the pink hair nodded to him. Sasuke had seen Sakura around town once or twice, but he had never seen the likes of Haku before. Are you from around here, Haku? The dark-haired boy shook his head. No, my homeland is in the water country. I came here for ninja training. The Uchiha boy wondered to himself why he had come to Konoha rather than train in the hidden mist village he had been told about. He chose not to say anything about it. Frail-looking Haku didn't at first appear to be ninja material in Sasuke's opinion. You want to be a ninja? He nodded and Naruto added, yeah, we're all gonna be ninja. That's right, Sakura agreed. A small glimmer of pride flickered across Sasuke's face. I'm going to be a shinobi too. It seemed to be a recurring goal around Konoha, Haku figured. The raven-haired boy turned around and displayed the fan emblem on his back. Sakura was the only one who remotely recognized it. I've mastered a fire jutsu that my father taught me, Sasuke announced proudly, so he has allowed me to wear the Uchiha clan crest. A fire jutsu. Haku was interested. How many types of jutsu were there? Hey, we can use the transformation jutsu. Naruto was beaming, and Haku can do this cool thing with water. Why don't we show each other our jutsu then? Sasuke asked. I was going back home. Why don't you all come with me? Sakura was excited. You'll let us go with you to the Uchiha estate. He smiled at her. Sure, it'll be fun. Haku was very interested in seeing a fire jutsu as well as making another friend. I'd like to see your home, Sasuke. Naruto nodded, yeah. And, could we maybe get something to eat? Sasuke gave him a puzzled look, alright. The sun had set, the street lamps buzzed on. On the way to the Uchiha compound, Naruto and Haku described their meeting, as well as an absent Gaara, to Sasuke and Sakura. The story entailed the kindness of Hiroshi and the ill ways of the Toad Senin Jiraiya. Ladies. Sasuke was befuddled by the stories of the old sage. Naruto disliked recalling Jiraiya's vulgar hobby, yeah, the guy's totally gross. Gaara knocked him out of the tree then so he'd stop looking at. He did it twice. Sakura asked, I didn't know Gaara-kun tried to beat up Gama-senin more than once. Gaara isn't afraid of Jiraiya-sama at all. Haku explained, wondering why that was. Yeah, he's great like that. Naruto laughed, remembering how Gaara had so easily made a fool of the sage. Sasuke would make it a point to meet this Gaara they were talking about one day. After turning onto a street that led into the Uchiha district, Sasuke noticed the uncanny silence. It was very out of place. Naruto kept on talking, oblivious to the worried look on the other boy's face. He paused. A foreboding feeling sunk into the pit of his stomach. Usually, at that point in the day, Sasuke was used to returning home and hearing the chatter of his kinsmen. He hadn't been expecting the stillness of the place. Is everything all right, Sasuke? Sakura looked at him quizzically, as did Haku. Sasuke frowned to himself, it's just that. He couldn't put his finger on it. He took a few hesitant steps onward. Maybe he was imaging things. He had just gained his father's approval and met Naruto and his friends. It was possible this feeling of uneasiness was temporary, caused by the new changes in his life. That was what he was thinking until a metallic smell caught his attention. You can feel a change but you can't smell it. Can you? Suddenly he felt nervous, and somewhat embarrassed that he broke out into a paranoid run in front of his companions, who only shouted after him in confusion as he tore down the street. It's all right. I had a long day. Maybe I'm just imagining. Sasuke finally stopped at the end of the alley and rounded the corner. The smell. You can smell change. Sasuke-san, are you okay? Haku asked after he, Sakura and Naruto had caught up to him. He said nothing. Haku almost took it as a rude gesture. After all, he and his friends were worried and didn't find running around a way to be welcomed into someone's home. He could at least nod his head if he didn't feel like talking. Naruto was about to speak up about finding a snack when he had turned to look at the street before them. He didn't want to believe his eyes. They were all lying on the ground. A hush fell upon the four children, and for a solid minute they stood, surveying the countless corpses lining the entire street. There were so many, old and young alike, and still and laying as if some cruel artist had painted them into such graceful positions. Dark hair hid many of their faces from view, but those less fortunate had eyes open wide and glassy like red and beautiful marbles. Crimson covered the clothing of every individual, their tea and sides torn open. The sight and smell made Sakura nearly gag. Haku felt his stomach heave and he was sick on the side of the road for a moment. Naruto stood by him, a dark look on his face, not caring that the farm boy had almost vomited on his shoes. What happened? The blonde's voice was barely above a whisper. What had happened? Sasuke felt compelled to casually ask his auntie Shizu, who was only a few meters away, that very question. He came to the hasty conclusion she would be unable to answer. She was slumped over on the ground just past her doorway, surrounded by a ruby pool. He was suffering from a complete mental shutdown. How had this happened? Were they all S? They couldn't all be S. There were so many people in the Uchiha clan, some may have been on missions. Sasuke was trying to fool himself and failing miserably. Many of his immediate family, grandmother, uncle, cousin, they were present and unmoving. The word stung his thoughts. He had never had to think about death before. What if mother and father? His heart was hammering. What if? Itachi. Is he alright? I've got to find them. Sasuke bolted down the road, completely forgetting his companions. It was true, he loved his parents, but he would be unable to bear the death of his beloved older brother. His image gave speed to his feet. Wait, it isn't safe. Sakura cried and followed him without a moment's hesitation. Where are you going? Naruto was just about ready to run after the two, before realizing that Haku was bent double at his feet. Haku. The dark-haired boy was shaking uncontrollably, and his dark eyes were wide and misty. B. The smell and the sight of it, it made him remember so vividly, so perfectly the death of his parents. He had no way to remind himself that this was another person's family, or that they were possibly in a lot of danger themselves staying there. He was drowning in the inescapable and gruesome memories of his parents and their final moments. Haku lurched forward, bawling at the top of his lungs and giving Naruto a terrible headache. Whoa, Haku, what's the matter? Naruto took the trembling farm boy by the shoulders and gently shook him, desperate to snap him out of his sudden fit. His mother, to death. His father, skewered on a shaft of ice. Haku could see them so plainly, as if they were standing in front of him, and he could even hear his father's distant, accusing voice. It was all his fault. Monster. No. Haku sobbed helplessly onto Naruto's shoulder. The blonde began to realize that they would be unable to follow after Sasuke and Sakura, and even worse, they wouldn't be able to leave the scene of the tragedy until Haku overcame his haphazard nervous breakdown. Sasuke. Sakura had lost sight of the Uchiha boy after he made a sudden right turn down another street. Where are you? They had left the streets, and had ventured towards the main house of the Uchiha clan. There were fewer bee out in the open, but the smell of bee hung thick in the air. She was scared. Losing track of Sasuke could mean his death. Her head was spinning. What would become of Haku and Naruto? Were they safe? And Sasuke had run off without saying anything. I hope they're all right. Sakura tried to keep her thoughts ordered while she ran around the outside of the houses of the complex. Haku and Naruto can look after each other, but Sasuke is all alone and I have to find him. Sasuke flew down the paths of the Uchiha homestead, sweat pouring down the sides of his face. Mother, father, he found himself calling out into the silence of the place, disturbed by every body so carelessly abandoned in the rooms he passed by. They really were and not just someone had them. Weapons were strewn about, there were signs of a struggle. Someone powerful, who could dozens of ninja quickly and easily had done this for a reason he couldn't even fathom. Cold-hearted the of his clan. The desperation he felt made him scream, Itachi. Please be all right, Itachi. Only silence. His feet thudded hard against pavement as he raced down another alleyway. Anarchy. Please. Suddenly, fear made him wise. He had made himself a perfect target if the K was still present, by calling out to his family members. Sasuke didn't make a sound as he entered the courtyard of his home. Please be all right. Please be all right. The front porch was bare. In silence he moved towards the house, racing to find his loved ones. He thought he could hear his own heart beating in his head like a sledgehammer as he stood outside the door of his parents' room. It was closed and it was quiet. Mother, he whispered, wondering if his parents were even in their room at a time like this. Sasuke was shaking badly as he slowly pulled open the door. He only took a half step forward before freezing where he stood. It was dark and they were there. The silence burned his ears. His eyes darted to the two figures ahead of him on the floor. They were piled one on top of another, and there was the metallic smell again. But oh, sweet relief found him for the briefest of moments as he saw his brother with them, standing up and he seemed perfectly fine. Itachi, he murmured. After a moment, he could see better in the dim light. Itachi stood there, wearing a blank expression, with his swirling red eyes aglow in the darkness. He was wearing his black ops armor. His sword was drawn and it was then Sasuke understood. His parents, and everyone, they were all Itachi had them. No. Sasuke said softly, shaking his head, how? He could only stare at his older brother's emotionless face as he stood mere feet away from him. Itachi slowly sheathed his sword without a word, and Sasuke watched, fixated with his parents' He wanted comfort and justification, to beg Itachi to tell him why he could ever do such a terrible thing to his own family. But this was not Itachi. Before him stood an evil, heartless creature that had crawled into his beloved brother's skin and so many people for no reason. Itachi was the caring older brother who acknowledged him and spent time with him. Itachi was a genius and his role model and his friend. Itachi was not Something in his older brother's eyes told him that Itachi already knew what he was thinking. Sasuke also understood in an instant that his brother could not justify what he had done, for whatever reason. Why did you do this? The boy cried. To measure my own capacity. His brother's voice was calm. You mean, you would kill everyone just for that purpose? It's essential. Sasuke felt that his death would be nothing more than a favor on his brother's part. The least Itachi could do would be to kill him quickly and reunite him with his parents and end his heartbreak. How could you do this? Sasuke screamed, holding the sides of his head as he wept. In response, a shuriken shot past him, and Sasuke felt a sea open on his arm. Foolish little brother. The words made his heart stop. Itachi's stoic face was tearing him to pieces. Did he feel nothing? Not even an ounce of regret for his clan. Sasuke couldn't bring himself to look away from the red, swirling pools and soon knew why it had been a huge mistake. Tsukuyomi. Sasuke felt himself being surrounded by a world of shadows and he could feel the seething aura of his older brother all around him. He couldn't move or speak. He had found himself trapped inside a world that was completely controlled and projected by his older brother. It was a world that perfectly resembled the Uchiha compound. An illusion. What? His family members were near, all of them standing up and alive. Everyone just stood there, not doing much of anything. And then there was Itachi, in full Anbu attire, standing in the middle of the street. Without any sort of warning, Itachi began to kill them, one by one, letting Sasuke witness the piercing screams of agony as they were cleaved and gutted. Their blood flecked the ground like scarlet raindrops. And Sasuke watched in terror as Itachi effortlessly ended the lives of his family members. He looked on in dread as his parents attempted to plead with their eldest son, but to no avail. His parents were down. He had to view every last lurid detail of the annihilation of the Uchiha clan. They all terrible, painful deaths. And he was next. In a matter of seconds Sasuke was released from Tsukuyomi, and he stumbled down to the floor in a state of mental collapse. Please, don't kill me. Sasuke was sobbing, fearing for his life and grieving for his family. Itachi did not move and said nothing to his younger brother. Sasuke's legs felt as limp and useless as wet paper, but he felt such an instinctual drive come over him that he was almost shocked when he was able to stand up. He was shuddering like a leaf in the autumn wind. Don't kill me. When he saw that his brother still had made no motion to harm him, he didn't give it a second thought. Sasuke fled. He ran until his legs failed him and he tripped and fell to the dusty ground outside, sobbing and screaming, and begged any higher powers to allow him to wake from such a disastrous nightmare. When he looked down the alley ahead of him, Itachi had caught up to him. Sasuke froze. You have potential sleeping inside of you, to become an opponent that can truly test my limits. You've been filled with jealousy and hatred in the hope of surpassing me, that's why I'm letting you live. Sasuke listened with tears streaming down his cheeks. Foolish little brother, if you truly wish to kill me, hate me, detest me, live a wretched, miserable existence and run. Run and cling to life, Itachi told him, and when you finally obtain the same eyes as me, come before me once more. His older brother fell silent again and Sasuke's tears ended. What choice would he have but to take Itachi up on the proposition? His knees quaked but he made himself stand upright and stare at the terrifying man in front of him. He felt motivation and energy surging inside his sea. And after a moment his surroundings were illuminated with perfect clarity. Though Sasuke was unaware of it, his irises dyed red and a single tomo swirled in each eye. He watched his brother suddenly leap away, finally trying to make his escape. If he was going to be allowed to live, then what did he have to lose? He gave chase. Get back here, the boy shouted. Sasuke sprang, pulling stray kunai knives from the wooden fence beside him, and bounded over the complex wall after his brother. With precision he had never known before, Sasuke hurled the weapons at his brother's head. Itachi was taken aback. He handily blocked two of the kunai with his sword. The third brushed the back of his head, see the tie of his headband and a few strands of black hair. Itachi's hitai 8 fell to the ground and he kneeled down to retrieve it. The burst of energy faded and Sasuke collapsed again, holding his injured arm as he watched his brother retie his headband. He sat panting on the walkway and Itachi turned to him. His face was distraught. A tear trailed down his cheek. Sasuke swooned and felt the world go black. Sakura tripped over a garbage can ungracefully when she heard a yell outdoors. She stood up and brushed her knees off, looking over her shoulder towards the origin of the sound. What in the world is going on here? She slipped down an alleyway as quietly as she could manage. Is anyone alive? Who was shouting? Oh, I have to find Sasuke. There had never been a time in her life in which she had wanted her parents near her so badly. All the death and gore was making her feel violently ill, and the only way she could bring herself to ignore the chaos was the thought that her friends could be in mortal danger. For a moment she questioned herself, weighing her chances of survival in a possible death trap, and felt stupid that she hadn't sent for help or looked for any signs of life or anything rational that she could have done. Nope. Irrationality went hand in hand with the actions of a frightened little girl. At the time she had seen Sasuke take off like a bullet, she hadn't thought of the consequences of following him, or getting lost in a huge clan estate full of people. Sakura considered herself at the moment, and rightfully so, more foolish than brave, but resolved that it would be better to find Sasuke and escape rather than to not find Sasuke and escape. The makings of a Kunoichi, guts and blind devotion. Sakura hopped upstairs to a new part of the district. It was empty. She didn't see any more or Sasuke. Knowing that calling out to him could warrant her death, or possibly her friends' deaths, she mentally kicked herself for not having a backup plan. Think, Sakura. Think. What would Haku-kun do? Haku's brilliant mind would have made her search a lot easier if she hadn't left him behind, or had he not had a nervous breakdown. But no, she had to focus on the task at hand. There was a good chance she could find her mark, and leave the Uchiha compound unscathed, that was, if she found him at all. Okay, what would Sasuke do? If I came home to this, what would I do? Sakura took a moment to organize her thoughts. I'd look for my mom and dad. Wait. He must have. From behind the barrel she had been using for cover, she surveyed the other side of the street and laid eyes on a small figure on the ground. Sakura leapt from her hiding place and dashed across a small pebble garden to where Sasuke had fallen. Sasuke. Darn. And she thought Naruto was dense. At that moment, she felt like she understood the blonde and his big mouth a little better. Sakura just couldn't help herself at the time. She kneeled down next to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. He drew a breath and she exhaled in relief, glad that he was alive. He was sweating and unconscious. His upper left arm was Sasuke-kun. Her voice was soft. Wake up. What happened? He leaned into her arms as his eyes peeked open. He had a far-off expression and did not seem to be completely aware of where he was. Did he leave? Did who leave? No. You're okay. Sakura consoled him. I won't let anything happen to you. Them. His voice cracked. Exhausted, his head dropped and he lost consciousness again. He was definitely in bad shape, Sakura determined. She wrapped him in a tight, sympathetic hug before hooking his arms in her own. She pulled him away from the center of the road and over to a low porch. Sakura laid him flat, supposing that she would not be able to get him away from the estate by herself. To leave and find help may also be dangerous. This is terrible. He just wanted to be friends with us and exchange jutsu, show us his home, Sakura thought sadly. Why did the day he met us turn out to be his worst day? In spite of the horrible that had taken place, Sasuke had at least made one friend. In the brief moments he had woken to inquire about his safety, Sakura's face was immediately engraved in his mind and associated with care and protection. While he had forgotten a detail or two about his brother, Sakura, at least, remained. Sakura deliberated on how to act next. She willed herself not to cry, although she knew how she would feel if she had come home to find her family. Keeping her composure was no easy task. She needed help, but she was unsure of how she was going to get it. It was still unclear if the danger had passed. Sasuke is hurt but he's alive. Did the K leave like he said? They had only just met and it felt like a piece of her had been forcibly away, and all she wanted to do was sit there and hold the Uchiha boy, and pray that somehow they could leave the compound alive. Sasuke, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Her words were quiet. I'm sure you and your family didn't deserve it. I hope whoever did it pays, and I am sorry that I may not be able to get you away from here. She felt the soft raven spikes of his hairbrush against her hand while she attempted to fortify her nerves. His breaths were quiet. Sakura surveyed the area thoughtfully before she stood up. I'll go as fast I can and get you some help. She was determined. Hang in there. I'll be back. Come on, Haku. Wake up. Naruto shook Haku by the shoulders, attempting to revive him. The farm boy had passed out after he had seen the SB lining the street, and Naruto had sat there, frantically trying to wake him up. It wasn't working. This is bad. Naruto looked around and shuddered. All of these people. Haku was deathly pale, and the way he had freaked at the macabre scene hadn't made Naruto feel any more at ease. Haku may be smart and strong, but... The blonde shook his head. Geez, he just totally flipped out. He was about ready to flip out as well. Naruto had never been acquainted with death before, and he wasn't sure how he should handle it. He could throw up in an effort to relieve his anxiety like Haku had, or he could run around like Sasuke and Sakura and hope that this was all a bad dream. Neither option seemed very appealing to him. Where did Sakura-chan and Sasuke go anyway? Naruto frowned. The thought had crossed his mind that they could be in danger or something worse. He could not do much about it with Haku out of commission. He propped Haku up in a sitting position against a wall and sat down next to him, trying to avoid the sight of all the lifeless people down the road. Naruto felt bile rise in his tea. Maybe he was going to be sick like Haku. His nausea immediately passed when he saw Sakura sprint down the street towards him. Naruto grinned in relief and jumped to his feet. Hey, where did you go? He raised his eyebrows. Sasuke isn't with you. Sakura gave him an update. Sasuke needs help. He's alright but he's unconscious and I can't move him. Naruto glanced over to Haku, who was still out cold. I know that feeling. Haku's been out too but I don't know if we can just leave him here. Man, this is annoying. Sakura crossed her arms and tapped her foot while she thought. How terribly inconvenient that only 2 people were awake and functioning. Only one solution came to mind. Naruto-kun, I need you to do something very important, okay? Sakura spoke up in a strange take charge sort of voice. He looked at her, responding to her confidence. I'll stay here. I'm going to keep trying to wake Haku up and maybe he can help me get Sasuke out of here. If not, we can just wait for help. She explained, but I need you to go find Hokage-sama as fast as you can and tell him what happened here. Sakura's command was straightforward enough and he understood. You've got to be careful, okay Sakura-chan? We don't know if it's safe yet. Naruto replied, but I will. I'll hurry, you can count on it. And he was off at top speed. Thank goodness for that boundless energy of his. She kneeled down beside Haku and began tapping his cheeks with Wake Up S. Hurry back, Naruto. I'm not sure what happened, but this could be bad for the entire village. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.